Hey, folks, welcome to the Marketing Share. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Alec Cheung, and with me is Barb.
Hey, Alec, how you doing?
Hello, I'm great. So, we've been doing this for a while. You know that?
I know we
This
have
is
over 1,000 episodes up on something.
not 1,000 episodes, but but still, been doing this for a while, and it's been fun. So, we're at it still, and we have another fun guest today, Brian McHale of Brandience. You want to tell our listeners about Brian?
Yeah. So, love this background. Brian is the CEO of Brandience, and it's very much what I kind of grew up with. Retail minded ad agency that really kind of combines creativity with these data driven insights, helps new like regional brands expand into national brands. Does
Mm-hmm.
some work with franchise businesses, and he's had some really cool, retail brands like Papa John's, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, TriHealth, AAA, Kroger, so
Mm-hmm.
he's worked with some really big brands, but also understands that work that needs to be done in driving real community resonance with those brands as well.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's maybe interesting too is he's different from our typical profile because look, this is not like this retail more marketing this is not my bailiwick, right? And I'm really more, B2B, B2B marketing, B2B selling. But I think some of the principles and things that he can talk to us about and that he'll share with us, it does lend itself to some of the things that we have to deal with too, especially if you're we've got a situation where you've got B2B to C, right? So you still are targeting an end consumer and you somehow have to engage the end consumer in order to drive usage or adoption. So I think some of those things are going to be interesting to talk to him about. I know he'll bring some perspectives there.
Yeah. I mean, heck, I do a lot of that in healthcare, right? It's healthcare. And then it's like the end user, the patient,
Yeah.
are they utilizing the solutions that you're offering or, the provider group that you're representing, et cetera. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of that B2B plus B2B2C.
absolutely. Well, and then he's also a local guy to me from
Oh,
Cincinnati.
yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's my neighbor. All right.
All
Well,
right.
let's go talk to Brian.
Cool.
We're back in studio again, our favorite place.
I know. I'm excited. We've got Brian McHale with us today from Brandience, right in Cincinnati, in your background, in your
That's right.
backyard, really,
We're,
right?
that's right. We're neighbors, Brian.
Yeah, good. That's good. Yeah.
Brian, I love the agency business. I've been in the agency business. I love it. So tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you became CEO of Brandience.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Really happy to be here. My journey, I started in production, so in TV production. I started in NBC out in Los Angeles, and did some production work out there. Did move to some of the NBC affiliates closer to home. Made my way back this way, and then worked for a variety of agencies across the Midwest. And then I had an opportunity to be I guess a hired gun, you could say, at a privately held agency. I was a partner there and grew that for about 10 years and decided that I really wanted to, that was a media planning and buying only agency. And I really wanted to get back into the full service world because at that time, that was in the mid 2000s. And so at that time, digital wasn't what it is today, but it was really coming on. And I felt like a full service media plus creative model was the best way to go and prep for where the digital world was going. So I had an opportunity to buy what is the precursor to Brandience, which is the current agency today. And it was a turnaround situation. So turned that around in a couple of years and have been doing it ever since. So purchased that in '08, and it's been a great ride. So
Well,
yeah,
that's
really enjoy
awesome.
it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You can now have a claim a turnaround story in your
Yeah,
portfolio, which is
exactly.
always, that's a feather in your cap. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is, and I don't like to do turnarounds. I determined that, but it was fun while we did it. Yeah,
You did it once. That's good enough. You checked the box.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Right, right.
So I have to touch on the LA experience. So I lived in LA for 10 years.
Okay.
I'm originally a West Coast guy. So then I'm trying to remember what is the NBC affiliate in LA? Is it KTLA?
NBC in LA is KNBC.
Okay.
But
Oh,
I was
okay.
working for the network. I was in talent relations, and so it was a lot of fun. I worked on all the programs that were recorded out there. Worked with the talent, so Tonight Show, all the different game shows. It was a
Oh,
fabulous job for right out of school.
yeah.
Loved it, and
Yeah.
it didn't pay a lot. And LA is not cheap,
Yeah.
but it was still a wonderful experience, and got me into the NBC network, which enabled me to do some work and in production and make my way back to the Midwest, which
Yeah.
is where I came from and where I am today. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And did you go to school out there?
No,
Is it-
I went to Miami of Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But the NBC connection was there was a gentleman, he's since passed, but a gentleman named Rick Ludwin, who he discovered Seinfeld
Oh,
and was big on bringing Letterman to NBC. And he was a very active Miami University grad. And so I met him through that and was able to, leverage some of his relationships and find my
yeah.
way out to Los Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a
Yeah.
cool background. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was a
All
lot of
right.
fun. A lot of
That's
fun.
great. That's great. Well, okay. So one of the things we wanted to talk with you about is I know that one of the things that you do a lot of work in is helping brands kind of expand, especially going from regional to national. And that made me curious because I think one of the questions as marketers that we probably are always trying to get right is like how do you recognize when you have this opportunity to expand? When are you ready to expand? Because, if you wait too long, maybe you're missing out on opportunities. But on the hand, if you if you go too early,
Right.
you may be getting ahead of yourself. But then if you wait too long, you're getting ahead of opportunities. So tell us a little bit about just, how do you go about thinking through that and helping clients with that?
I think there are some signals that you can find, and honestly, as you framed it up as a marketer, which makes sense. But honestly, the first things we really look at are more operationally based. If a client is asking our opinion, sometimes they don't want that outside of marketing. But if they're asking our opinion relative to whether it's time to go or if they should do it, we'll look at operations first and help them think through. Are they ready for something like this? Can their operations handle a larger footprint, whether that be just expanding into a new region of the country or expanding nationally? And a lot of times those signals will include things like, are they able to keep customer sat scores up during really busy periods of time? I mean, it sounds simple, but it's a lot of the basics that you need to kind of look under the hood to see if they're able to do that even in their current footprint. And if they are, that can be a signal that will allow that allows you to maybe start thinking about it, and making sure operations and marketing are aligned. It's not something that you do in a silo, because if they're not aligned to the expansion, it can be a disaster. Obviously, other signals are looking at financials. Are they meeting the ROI goals even in their current market, in their current footprint? And if they are, that's also something that makes you feel better about pulling that trigger and going larger, whether it be regional or national. But I think from a marketing perspective, one of the best signals is there any organic pull for the brand outside of your current footprint? Meaning, are there people on social media that are saying, "Hey, come to my market. I knew you and I'm a big fan, and I want you to come here." Or, "Why can't I get your product or service in my hometown?" Also looking at search activity, where's that coming from? So I think those together, operationally, financially, what are some of those soft signals? Those can really, really help you feel better about making the decision versus just saying, "Hey, it's time to grow. Let's grow."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recall, and I believe you have some retail and some food clients and
Yes.
and franchise clients, et cetera. I guess I was wondering, is it mostly that they ask you where they should go, or is it really or do they have a kind of a grand plan? I mean, I remember very sophisticated franchisees having a plan of action, based on, market demographics, et cetera, that they've learned over time, right?
Yeah, Barb, you're correct. We do a lot in franchise, but also corporately. I don't think in our history we've ever had a franchise group ask us. It's typically been the conversation at the corporate level, where where they may be thinking about it either because of corporate growth goals or maybe real estate is pushing. Hey, we want to grow, and they're looking at different markets. And obviously, they have a lot of the real estate division of a franchisor has a lot of resources available to them to know where to go as far as the best, an A location versus a C location or something like that. But they will come to us and ask us, hey, help us get a read on this. And like I said, oftentimes we surprise them by saying, happy to do that. And here are the types of things we're going to look at. But have you also thought about operations? And a lot of times they have, but we feel it's our obligation to ask those questions, because I don't care how good a marketer you are, if operations aren't ready for it, you're going to fail miserably, and likely marketing will get the blame over operations. Just it's often the way it works.
Yeah, I've been there. I mean, come on, the grand opening is not always good to have on the first day, right?
Right.
So now let's say you are in one of those markets. What does the first 90 days look like, or how do you help plan what that looks like for a client?
It's interesting. We have the first 90 days are critical, and even one thing you mentioned, Barb, in terms of sometimes you don't want a grand open on the first day. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself to answer your question, but we will really try to seed the market with some marketing even before you do a soft opening, just so build that demand.
Okay.
But we try to balance rigor with speed, because the first 90 days, everybody's going to be anxious. Like, okay, we made the decision. What are we going to do? How are we going to get this thing open? And we do a lot with research and data. Hopefully the brands have some data that they can help us with, but we also have data that will allow us to dig into a market. I would say the first step, though, for the first maybe few weeks, that might be long, say maybe 10 days, you really try to listen in that market and understand what that market consists of as it relates to the target audience or the concept or brand or whatever that you're trying to move in there, so that you have a good feel for the community, for the values. And fortunately for us, because we do this quite a bit on a local basis, we have that information oftentimes, but we also want to make sure that we're not rushing into anything, because your next step really is to design a test and learn scenario that you're going to do for much of that 90 days. And that's testing and learning really across a matrix of messaging as well as media spend, because your new market is so much different than your mature market. You can't assume that what worked in your mature market is going to work in your new market, because you've already built a tremendous amount of awareness in your home or core market. So you have to start with those awareness building opportunities, channels, in order to begin to try to even hope to have, as you mentioned, a good grand opening. And so you work through that process through a test and learn process, so that at the end of those 90 days, you really hopefully have that toolkit built that will then be able to allow you to sustain whatever momentum you've been able to build, and then hopefully build on top of that momentum too. And it varies so much based on budget too. Some brands have a lot of money that they're willing to put behind grand openings, and others, you mentioned franchise brands. Oftentimes franchisees aren't required to spend a lot of money when it comes to grand openings. You have to be really choiceful, really targeted with what you're going to do from a dollars and cents standpoint. Otherwise, you're going to burn through that in 5 minutes, and then what?
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned playbooks, and even though it can vary depending on the budget, but do you approach it as having kind of like there's a profile or a standard template to some of how these playbooks look like, and then you just try to match them to the opportunity based on size and a little bit of testing? And I ask specifically because this is one of the things that I'm wrestling with right now, where you have sometimes, like I'm come from mostly B2B marketing, but we have situations where there's a lot of B2B to C, right? So you do have to try to think about, wait, there's an end result. There's the end consumer impact on either getting usage of a solution or usage of a platform. and you have to try to encourage or drive that end consumer to use it in order to generate the revenue. And I'm curious about, like, are there playbooks that you turn to that are a little bit more standardized so that you kind of know, hey, when you're going into a new market, you generally know that this is the component, this is what it looks like?
The way I would answer that is the way I would think about a playbook is it's probably could be explained also as like a market matrix, and just say, okay, and you will, I'm not coming up with the word, but you would group markets by similarities and based on the current footprint, and you would know what worked in markets that, say, are highly competitive, or markets that are very expensive, or where they have maybe B locations versus A location. I mean, there are a lot of different factors, all depending on the brand, that would go into setting up this matrix. And then any new markets or new geography, you would start by looking at your current matrix and say, okay, this looks like this one is in matrix number 2. So these are the types of things that we want to start with based on our past history, knowing full well that it is still going to be a test and learn, because your awareness level isn't going to be anything like it is in your current footprint. And also there are just intangibles that you often don't know or understand until you're into that market with that brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, this is the $1 million question, right? I'm a big franchisee, right, or a franchisor out in the marketplace, and I've now scooped up some locations, right? How do you maintain that local brand or that local love in the midst of a, national brand campaign or a national brand expansion? How do you do that? Is it possible, really?
I think the way. Yes and no. To answer your question of, is it possible? The way I would, I think, first answer that is, it's probably less about the local connection and more about, if you're going into a new geography or in a big expansion, of maintaining the authenticity of your brand, or just, not losing yourself losing your brand just because you're going into a new geography. You have to stay true. You have to stay authentic. And so as an agency, you have to really act like the brand police, because if you go into a new market, say it's a franchise situation, oftentimes franchisees are very opinionated about what they want to do in a particular market, right? But they're also likely more of an operator than they are a marketer. And so you have to really finesse and work with the brand tenants and make sure you don't lose it. And, back to that market matrix, you may know that given a certain type of market that some sort of sports partnership might have worked well, or some type of other type of the arts or other community partnerships. You begin to look for those types of connections within the local market or the new footprint, and see if you can create some of that love, some of that community connection. But that community connection all comes from just that emotional appeal. And so if you've tapped into and tested the right messaging, that's going to help you initially, whether you have a local partnership or not. And then you can begin to try to build through agencies helping. It's also really important for your managers to do local store marketing. If you're in a franchise situation, you've got to equip the managers with the tools and the toolkit so that they can go out and shake some hands and slap some backs in the market and make sure that they are creating that one-to-one relationship that, frankly, only they can do. That, me sitting in Cincinnati or my team going in and visiting that market on a somewhat regular basis is never going to be able to do what they're going to be able to do as that local operator within the new footprint.
Honestly, I remember, of course, I've been in that situation where you're the brand police, which is not so fun for your customer who's also the franchisee, right? And, but truthfully, the touch point at the store level, right, is always, your most local and most intimate relationship with someone. So you can still build that kind of community by invigorating their ideas in what the touch points look like, right? Well, let's leave the logo alone over here.
Yeah.
But let's really create, a meaningful community relationship there.
Right. In some brands, you can also finesse that difference between corporation, major, big brand and the local brand, while still making sure they fit together like hand in glove. This isn't an expansion example, but you all might remember. I don't know. It's maybe been eight or so years ago. Papa John's went through a little bit of a public relations issue with ownership, and they're corporately they were taking a hit as they were trying to right themselves and get through that issue. We were working with a number of franchisees in different markets, and so what we did for our markets is we developed basically a locally owned and operated campaign for those markets. It was very much on brand for Papa John's. It still promoted what Papa John's was all about, but we made sure to feature the local operators, the local ownership, and those markets that we were able to do that in fared far better than the markets that didn't do something like that. So we were able to differentiate slightly, but people still loved the Papa John's product and the pizza, and they wanted it, and they were willing to say, okay, I am supporting Bob because Bob lives in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian. So, okay, one final question, maybe in this area, when you're expanding, what are the KPIs that you look at to tell you that it's working? And I'm especially curious if there are any that you tend to look at where they're like good leading indicators, like even before the sales starts to kick in, but you're starting to get like, hey, I'm seeing the signs. We're on the right track. I don't know if you've got anything like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've mentioned some of them already. I think just, social chatter, what sorts of engagement, what sorts of excitement are you seeing in the market via social channels? We're also big fans of doing foot traffic or footfall studies where, you'll be able to serve somebody an ad on a mobile device and you can tell if they went to that location. You can't always tell, particularly in your example here, Alec, of if you don't have sales yet, if say they don't have a sophisticated POS system or something where you can't actually determine if that person entered the location and then purchased, but at least you can show that, hey, they saw the ad and within a certain period of time they showed up at the location. You can start to feel good about that. You can look at search activity, search traffic, look at things like, are people now signing up for our loyalty programs or our emails? There's all those. They're not necessarily intangible, but they're not related to sales, but they can certainly show momentum. So those are the types of things that we look at right away, because oftentimes, for whatever reason, it seems like when you go into new markets, there are some hiccups on reporting and sales and things, and back to, I think, your original question on what are some signals that might help if it's time to go and expand. Another one I would say, which I don't think I mentioned, is what's your tech stack like? Can your tech stack handle it? Because I'll tell you, we've done some pretty big expansions for brands where their tech stack wasn't up to par, and you get into it maybe 25% of the way, and you have to pause and that's a lot of people waiting to get a tech stack right.
What does that look like in life? How does that manifest in your plan?
How does it manifest in our plan? Unfortunately, oftentimes what happens is we're paused. Either we're paused, marketing is paused, or we're unable to measure, and so we're spending money. We're doing, but we're not able to optimize the way that we had hoped to be able to optimize, and so that return on ad spend isn't. And trust me, we're still getting asked what the return on ad spend is, but you don't have the ability to maybe answer that question as well as you could. We worked with, this wasn't a bad situation, but when we helped Tropical Smoothie initially, we were their grand opening agency of record, and they were going from, at the time, I think they had 700 locations, and they had a goal over the next 3 years to get to 1,500. And so we helped them do that. And so that's a lot of stores that you had to grand open in a short period of time. And they realized during that period of time that their tech stack was kind of busting at the seams. And so we did have to make some modifications on digital advertising. We did have to get some agreements up front with the brand to say, listen, we're not going to be able to tell you exactly what we thought we were going to be able to tell you, but we still think it's right for these reasons and because of other brands that we've worked with, et cetera. So there's a little bit of a leap of faith that comes in there, but at some point it gets fixed, and then you can start measuring, and you just keep your fingers crossed that you were thinking correctly going into it, and we got 1,500 of them open, so I think we did okay in that case.
Good job. Yeah, in the 3-year window that they were hoping for.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's a great brand. Yeah.
Another feather in your cap. That's nice. Nice story. So let's talk about measurement and attribution. That's another fun marketing topic.
Speaking of return on ad spend, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Do all marketers like to talk about attribution? I think we don't like to talk about attribution. Right?
Yeah.
Necessary evil.
I know. Yeah. I think the big thing these days in digital, right, is we're going cookieless, no more cookies. Mm-hmm. And the big concern across marketers is that that's what we've always depended on to be able to track things. So what do you tell your clients right now about, this change in the market and the ability to track? What's been the impact?
Yeah, I think we talk about this a lot, and I think the term cookieless is, while it's typically in the headlines, it's not really true. I mean, there are still a lot of, as the woman who heads up our digital media area has said, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, there's still plenty of cookies for all of us to eat out there on this. Okay. On this, there's a lot of different opportunities, and then from a browser standpoint, Safari and Firefox, they're no longer cooking things. But Chrome, I think it was just last week, came out with, or maybe it was earlier than that, but they just came out and said, hey, cookies they're here to stay. So what we've seen and what we believe has happened is, the responsibility has kind of shifted away from maybe the browser or whatever, but it shifted to the individual websites. So you have to opt in or not. And so it's become more of a consumer choice. Apple has done a great job with their app, with their app store in terms of trying to help people protect their privacy if they're interested. But so there are a number of ways still, though, to measure. There are also a number of different ways to target besides cookies. I mean, contextual targeting, I think, is seeing a resurgence where you're targeting content that your target audience is going to go to, and in many respects, that's even better, I think, than kind of cookie targeting. So I don't feel like we have felt a major hit because of cookies changing. I will say, back to your part of your question that said, what are we telling clients? We are continuing to recommend that they gather more and more and more first-party data. If they can focus on their CRM, if they can focus on email addresses or loyalty programs or whatever it takes in order to get a consumer to opt in and give them the information, they absolutely have to do that, because the privacy, kind of the push towards increasing privacy isn't done. It's going to continue to get better, I think. And what I mean by better is, I'm a big privacy advocate. It's funny, I make money with clients off of tracking people, but I'm very much of a privacy advocate, and I think it needs to continue to get better. But if you have that first party data, if you have that agreement and that relationship, then you're golden. And I think the term relationship is the key that brands need to be thinking about. How can you build a long-lasting relationship by giving value in exchange for something from that, that.
Right. That hasn't changed, right? If you provide value, right, in exchange, people are willing to give you an email or what have you. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, right? I mean, we've actually had, people on with this whole cookie fearing situation. So it's not really come to pass quite yet. Let's talk about the real Wild West, which of course is now AI. Wow. How are you telling clients, or what are you doing in terms of generative AI in some of these retail businesses? Is that really mission critical for them as well?
Yeah, it is. I think, and the place I would start, and I think it should be number one for retailers to be thinking about, is just SEO and GEO, right? So search engine optimization and now generative engine optimization. Search is fractured. It is different than it was. The latest stats that I've seen as it relates to Google, I mean, Google's share of U.S. search is down to about 86, 85%. about a year and a half ago, they were above 90. So, that may not seem like a lot, 3 or 4, 5 percentage points, but it's a lot. That's a lot of searches. One stat that I saw said that equates to about 1 billion less searches a week running through Google. That's a lot. That's a lot of searches that aren't coming through Google. So where are they going? They're going to, people are using ChatGPT. They're using Perplexity to do their searches. And those answer engines, the generative search platforms, are looking for information in different ways on websites. They're looking for a slightly different structure. They're looking for answers first. They're looking for content being written in an answer first type way. This area of GEO is so new that I think a lot of people, most of us, still don't know exactly how a ChatGPT, for example, is finding information and bringing it to the forefront in its AI snippets. But what we can tell so far is it seems like those answer engines are just looking at the first few sentences of content or the first paragraph of content. They're not going as deep. And so it's really important that whatever you think someone might be looking for as far as an answer that might relate to your content, you need to try to write to that. And that's not always easy. And Google they're not sitting on their hands. I mean, now they've got AI mode, they've got AI overviews, so they're not dead.
I'm wondering if that 86% search also includes now what is coming up on the AI, on the Gemini.
Yeah, as I understand it, that was all Google products. Yeah.
So it is encompassing.
But it's still, I mean, that's a big drop for the 800-pound gorilla. But the other thing I'd say too, and back to your question of what do we tell clients, we unfortunately tell them it's not getting easier. You hope with new technology that it's going to get easier. Well, you still need to do the SEO stuff that you were doing, but now you need to start thinking about your content in a different way as it relates to GEO and the structure that they like. We built a product that allows you to optimize content for generative search. And so you can put content in and it will evaluate it and tell you this is what that content will likely look like if it surfaces on ChatGPT. This is what it'll look like if it surfaces on Gemini, on Perplexity. And so that enables us to then step back and say, all right, let's go back to that web page and rewrite it because it's not fully optimized for generative search at this point. So it's helpful. It's not perfect because generative search is continuing to change, but it's something directionally that we can use to help clients start to think about their content.
That's interesting. Is that something proprietary that you developed?
That we built,
based on like trial and error or just testing and experimentation?
Yes. So we built that actually using generative technology. We were able to build that as well. So we're using generative search to help us understand what generative search thinks.
Well, that's great.
Well, I'm sure it's about answering questions that people are searching for, right?
Yeah. The other thing I was just going to add on that too, that you make me think about here is, web design. We tell our clients web design is changing because, essentially AI agents are now going to your website. And it's not humans going to your website, because another stat from Google that I read, it was in the 60% range. 60% of all searches on Google right now are zero click, which means people are not clicking through. Right. And so humans aren't going to your website, but we know that agents are going to your website. So you need to really think about web design for both a human and web design for an agent. And that's a different animal. And talk about, you use the term wild west, Barb. I mean, we're back there now.
Do you have a couple of snippets there or examples that you be willing to share? Like, what do you do differently on your website if you're specifically thinking about making it for an agent and not a human? What is there an example or something?
Well, yeah, a lot of it's structure, and oddly, there are some pretty good overlap between what you would have done in SEO and what you've done GEO, but it appears, like I said, that your content being written as answer first and also
Yeah.
being very concise
Yeah.
is way more advantageous to you than maybe what it used to be. Because if you think about SEO, it was all about, hey, how many times can I cram that keyword in?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's not about keywords anymore.
Right.
It's about answers first and trying to put yourself in the position of your customer and figuring out what are they going to be searching on? What questions are they going to have that I want to be the answer for?
Right. Right. Better have that Q&A up there.
Yes. FAQs. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but also talking about like making sure you actually use your H1 and H2 headings in a very logical
Yes.
manner, right? Don't just use them for design purposes.
Correct.
It's like, oh, H1 is just going to be the big words. No, actually
Correct.
make it make sense logically.
Yeah.
So, probably things like that too, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
really interesting. So let's stick on AI, but let me ask you from a different angle. So as an agency owner, right? I'm sure you use AI. You just said that you use some AI tools, right? But is there any sensitivity to what you disclose with clients? Like, there's always I would think that as an agency, you're like, yes, we use AI, but you're still paying us for the human expertise. But as this blends more and more, do you ever get clients challenging you on that? And, how do you deal with that?
It's a good question. And I haven't had anybody challenge us on it yet.
Okay.
And I would like to think that's because we've been very transparent about our usage of AI. So when we jumped into, doing digital media and all that, I mean, we've been using various forms of AI and machine learning forever, right? We all have.
Yeah.
And we just didn't really realize it, right? Most of us didn't talk about it. So generative AI comes out at the end of 2022, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, what's AI? So, but what we did starting in January of 23, when we really saw what was happening with generative AI, and frankly, at that time, you said as an owner of an agency, I was equal parts terrified and equal parts excited because I thought this could be the greatest thing that ever happened to us, or I could be out of business in February. So what we did was we developed an AI policy that basically said, here's how we're going to treat generative AI. Here's how we think people need to operate internally using generative AI. Here's the training we're going to offer. Here's the governance that we're going to put in place to make sure that we guard our information as well as our clients' information. And here are the tools that we're allowing our people to use. And we share that with our clients so that they understand what the policy is. So we're very transparent. We also have developed as an agency an AI roadmap because we are developing different products. One of the things that's interesting, and we share that with clients, but one of the things that's interesting about developing products now, I was at an AI conference a few weeks ago, and there was someone talking about an AI native company, and a startup. And that company was touting that they had a ratio of agents to employees of 10x. So 10 agents for every employee. So that got me thinking. So I came back and I said, how many agents, what do we have? And I would classify us as like an AI forward company, not an AI native company, but we have 3.5 times. So I felt pretty good about that. So for every employee, we've got 3.5 agents doing something. We aren't laying people off. Our policy states that we are very, human first and human centered. And so I believe that all of that has helped us sort of get around what you're talking about, Alec, of a client saying, hey, I'm paying for the human expertise. I'm not paying necessarily for the AI agents. But what we've been able to do is demonstrate that our people are able to spend time where they're adding more value than doing the things, frankly, that they probably didn't want to do anyway, or that were very rote or repetitive.
Yeah. I work on startups and scale-ups that are AI native, right?
Okay.
And a lot of them are developing, right? They're developing software in an AI native fashion that is leading to a whole new unification that they hadn't had in multiple modules before, right? Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
On the writing side of things and on the development of content, now we're even seeing that in LinkedIn, right? Some of the you're actually penalized by some AI content now, right? So you've got to really manage your use of it based on what the tool is actually leading more authority to. So
Right.
that's kind of interesting too,
Yeah.
I think. What?
Yeah.
I learned this, great. I think it could be a work savings, and now I can't use it because I might get penalized
Right. Right.
on
Yeah.
this platform,
Right.
right? It's like, I know you want us to, develop real content, and that's noble and good and everything, but
Yeah.
that's kind of an interesting dichotomy.
It is. I think like the higher ed, the whole industry of higher ed's going through something very similar too, right? A lot of it's the universities won't allow students to use it. They don't have classes teaching them. But I'll tell you what, I'm not hiring anybody that doesn't have at least a high level of curiosity or can demonstrate
Yeah.
some familiarity with it. They don't need to come to our company being an AI expert. We have training and all that, but they can't come in and say, "Yeah, I wasn't allowed to use it."
Yeah.
I think that's doing them a disservice.
Oh, it's
Oh,
huge disservice. And I can't imagine even just some of the debates that are going on. But gosh, man, to come out of college these days and not have some exposure to AI, I think that's a huge miss. So,
Yeah,
but
I know, but we've had this discussion too. Many of the folks in our circle, there's different perspectives on, is it cheating, right, for an engineering
right.
student and so
Yeah,
forth. I
right.
mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of different takes on it right
I
now, and we're
agree.
all kind of feeling our way through, I think.
But I
Mhm.
think that's where you get into something like AI policy. Like you just have to have that policy
Yeah.
because I would agree with whoever says students shouldn't use it to cheat, but
Yeah.
they
Right.
can use it throughout the whatever 13 weeks of a course in different ways, but
Mhm.
maybe not on the test or maybe it's a tough thing. I'm glad I'm not necessarily in higher ed right now.
Yeah.
Trying to figure that out. But I do worry about um, um, kids coming out of college, and are they going to be prepared to do what they need to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Let's go to what I think will never go away in this new world, which is relationships. Right.
Mhm.
So people do come to you, right, for the relationship, the trust that you provide, et cetera. So what makes a great relationship? Because this is the $1 million question, right? Agencies want to retain clients.
Mhm.
Clients always want to find great value in an agency. New marketers really need to understand what that relationship looks like.
Right.
So, what does make a great relationship, value wise in an
Yeah.
agency relationship with a client? I think that, everybody wants to know that, but
I-
you have figured it out, really.
Yeah, I don't know what I would say if I were, you mentioned new marketer. If I were
Yeah.
giving a new marketer advice, I would say that the first thing they need to do is try to assess whether an agency that they're considering shares the same values as you, because a relationship is so value based, and because the way that they will work with you both ways. What expectations are. I think values are such a huge thing to dig down into in kind of that RFP process, if you will, even though I hate those three letters. And that they're sort of the counter to a relationship. But I do think it starts with values, trying to understand that. I think also from a marketer standpoint, I would say just be realistic on what you want. Be transparent about what you want, and that means that you had to have thought through what you really want that agency to do. Because I would say, on the rare occasion that we have started a relationship with a brand and it hasn't worked out, and that has happened several
Hmm.
times, right? It's primarily because the scope of work that was discussed was not the scope of work that was really needed. And
Mhm.
so the issue there was we as an agency priced and put resources against one scope, and the client needs something else, and suddenly neither of us is in a good position to provide something back to the other party, service the other party the way you need to. And so a lot of that is that, like I said, transparency, values based, and be open if something's not going right. Speak up, tell the agency. There was great story earlier in my career. I remember we would do quarterly check-ins with clients, and they were basically report cards. And the lead on the account came back to me and said, for this piece of business, we did great. we got 5s out of 5s all across the board. Oh, that's fabulous. So like 2 weeks later, I happened to be with the CMO at an event. We both happened to be going to the same industry event. And so we got together and had dinner. And about halfway through dinner, he said, I just got to tell you, the person running the business is not getting it done. We're really struggling, and I think I'm going to review the account. 2 weeks earlier, I had been given a report card that said 5 out of 5. And so I asked him, I said, what? And he said, well, I just didn't feel comfortable giving that feedback. And I thought, oh my goodness, you felt more comfortable firing me, so, but the good news is that we worked through it and we were able to, because I had a good open relationship, but gosh, agencies want to know. You may not think they want to know, but they want to know the bad news fast because we've got a lot of options to fix things. We just need to know what to fix.
I said that in it was like kind of, what do you want in a great partner, right?
Yeah.
Tell it like it is.
Yeah.
Tell it like it is. That's really important, right? Don't sugarcoat it. That's a hard stop and that's a hard no. Here's why. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Direct conversation is good.
It's just like any relation. It's business or personal. The more open, transparent, honest you can be, the longer term it's gonna end up being, you hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe the way you said it there, I think is helpful. It's like, if you're not happy with it, give them the opportunity, explain it early, because give them the opportunity to fix it.
Yeah.
Because then that's the win-win, right?
Yeah.
And you said, we have a lot of ways that we can try to fix something. Okay, yeah. Give them that opportunity to do that. I think that's a good takeaway.
Yeah. I remember another example, a large national bank that had been working with for years, and they were having some issues with our client service team. And they came to me and said, hey, listen, we need to fix this. And I fixed it. And I remember 6 months later, that client coming to me and saying, thank you for doing that. I didn't really think you were going to do it. It's like, well, it gets back to that value thing, right? It's like, I want to give you what you need. And as long as it's a good partnership, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Hey, think about it. You're a corporation, right? You're an employee. You got to give your employee immediate feedback, right? This is what you owe them, right?
Exactly.
As an employer. So anyway, well, thank you so much for hanging with us on the Marketing Share, Brian.
Yeah, this has been fun.
How do people get a hold of you and partner with Brandience?
Oh, sure. Well, our website's brandience.com. Pretty simple. We have a new podcast that's on YouTube. It's Go Beyond. So under the Brandience page, if people want to check that out, and then if they want to connect with me personally on LinkedIn, it's just Brian McHale. Yeah.
Great.
So yeah. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Having you on. It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.